Greetings and welcome to Elect Connect, candidate forum brought to you by the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce. I'm Mary Morgan, Director of Advocacy and Public Policy, and right now we're here with Trent Feuerbach. He is a candidate in the Democratic Party primary running for Indiana State Senate District 40. Before we get started, I'd like to first thank our sponsors for Elect Connect, without which we would not be able to do this work. They are German-American, Bunger and Robertson, the City of Bloomington, Hoosier Energy, Smithville, and Indiana University. And once again, we are with Trent Feuerbach, Democratic Party candidate in the Indiana State Senate race for District 40. Welcome, Trent.
Thank you, Mary, for having me.
Yeah. I'd like to just start by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for this office.
Well, I looked at the candidates that were, first of all, I grew up here in Bloomington. I was born and raised here. I graduated from Purdue University many years ago and moved out of state, moved to Texas, lived and worked in Texas and globally for many years. And then about 10 years, I came back to Bloomington. And since I've been back, I see that, you know, our city and our state has transformed a lot since that I left. And I think we can do better than what we are doing now. So I thought it was time to jump in and run.
Okay, great. Well, our first question is going to be related to the COVID-19 pandemic and the state legislature, the state in general. And we are interested in hearing what kind of assistance you think the state should provide to local businesses during this time.
I think that businesses are important, but people are more important. And I'm hearing a lot coming out of Washington about aid for banks and corporations. I see that with the Small Business Administration, they're giving money to public corporations. I didn't think public corporations were generally small businesses. And I see a lot of backlash coming out of this. I want to see people who are in need get help from government. I think that people need welfare, not businesses. I don't have a problem with some support for businesses, but I think that if you help the people recover, it can trickle down. I'm not generally a believer in trickle down economics, but I think when you take care of the people first, businesses and banks benefit from that. If you help people to get over this hump that we're experiencing right now, it is temporary. I think everyone will be better off, including the businesses.
Okay. Well, on a somewhat related question, I'm sure you're aware that we're moving into a budget year for the state legislature, and there's an expectation that revenues will be decreased because of COVID-19. What areas would you prioritize for cuts, assuming that there will need to be budget cuts? And what parts of the budget do you think need more support, not less?
You know, this is a question that I sort of have a problem with. I think, of course, if we don't deal with COVID-19 properly, we're going to have to make drastic cuts. I am an advocate for antibody testing and studies statewide. I think we need to start with a small representative study of Indiana to get a handle on just how many people are still vulnerable. I know a lot of people have been infected, but there was a study last week from New York. New York's already doing a lot of these things, and they found that 13.9% of the people in New York had antibodies. They had actually been infected already. We need to know that kind of information for Hoosiers. Hoosiers need to know, am I vulnerable? If we're not vulnerable, of course, we can go out and start doing our business again. I think this needs to be the priority. If we're like the governor and we sit on our hands, of course, we're going to have to make budget cuts next year. But if we get ahead of this, like Governor Cuomo is doing, then maybe we won't have to face drastic budget cuts. Now, which budget cuts would I make? First of all, I would want to take care of the employees of the state. I would not want to cut positions or salaries. I think we need those people to recover. I think we have a lot of projects, at least here in the county and the city, where the city has bought up a lot of land. They have assets that they're trying to redevelop the old hospital site. I'm sure the state has projects like that that are similar, where we might want to liquidate those assets and use that capital to actually fund government when the tax base is down. I think there's ways to get through this, and of course we should expect some state funding from the federal government too. There's bills trying to get through Congress now, if they will ever come back in session, that will provide a lot of funding for the state at the federal level. We get quite a lot of funding from federal grants and programs for the state of Indiana, for the county, and locally here in the city. And we need to expect that a little bit. We also have a situation where I heard yesterday that the Federal Reserve is expanding the purchase of municipal bonds and state bonds. And so there should be some credit out there from the banking system to facilitate government in the short term. And I think we should rely on those sources of funding to even the keel and minimize the volatility to state employees and state projects.
Okay, great. The next question is one that was submitted by one of our members. In light of decreased tax revenues, which may or may not happen due to COVID-19, would you consider legalizing marijuana? Why or why not?
First of all, I've never smoked marijuana in my life. I've never used it ever. However, I think with the other states around us legalizing it both for medicinal purposes and recreationally, it's something that we can see as, I think there's 11 states now that have done this. It is a source of tax revenue. I'm not sure it's a successful source of tax revenue, but I'm not really a fan of heavy regulation on marijuana either. I don't see it as a horrible crisis, or is maintaining that status quo is not really important in my view. I think we need to go along with what the rest of the nation is doing and come into the 21st century.
Okay. I'm sure you're aware of this. In the past, we've seen tension between the state legislature and local governments, particularly Bloomington. What's your view of Indiana's Home Rule Act, and how do you determine when the state should step in to limit the action of local governments?
Well, there are things that need to be done at a state level. When people come to Bloomington, there needs to be some consistency in our laws. I think that the people that are in the county that want to remain outside the city, we have to consider them. I think the way the mayor has gone about trying to annex parts of the county is not appropriate. I think there needs to be more public involvement in how that's done, rather than riding roughshod over people and forcing them in through, I see both sides of this issue, and we're a democracy, and I think everybody needs to have a say in this. I really feel like people need to be part of the processes more here in the city of Bloomington, and I see with the Parks Department and a lot of the things that the mayor's doing, people are not really part of the process. And, I take issue with that.
In many ways, here in Indiana, state legislators, especially if you're in a seat with a minority party, they have limited influence. How would you plan to approach your work so that your constituents have a voice in state government?
Well, I think that, I need to be accessible to people, and I think that I am. I'm not afraid to talk about issues. There's a lot of tough issues out there, and everyone has a different perspective on things, and sometimes those perspectives are out of the norm. We should be able to talk with a diverse group of people about their problems and not shy away from the questions. And so, I'm happy to have an open discussion about issues and where we're going. But, my campaign is more about empowering people and making sure that people are taken care of, rather than, just business and corporations. And, we really need to take care of people. We need, especially during these times when we're facing COVID-19, the focus needs to be on people more than it is on business.
Okay. Well, it's time to wrap up. Are there any final thoughts you'd like to share?
I think that we really need to focus on teachers and public servants in this time. And one of the things that I would like to do going forward in this campaign, and if I'm elected, is to eliminate income tax on public servants, teachers, anyone that's involved with our children as their work. I think a lot of these people, they're not compensated enough. And we've seen the teachers challenging the governor this year. I really think we need to get behind our teachers, but also our firemen, our policemen, the public servants, the people that are essential at this time. And we need to say, look, the state government is paying your salaries. Why is it that you have to give some of that money back? We're not talking about eliminating federal taxes here, but as far as state income taxes, local income taxes, I really think we need to remove that tax burden from our public servants. I think this is a way to give a reasonable raise to these people, and eliminating that burden. And with respect to teachers, I know there's a lot of teachers that spend a lot of money out of their own pocket to support their classrooms for different projects and supplies. I've heard this for years. I really want to see public expense accounts for teachers that they can expense off supplies for their classroom, that it's not having to come out of their income. We need to give these people support. They are really important to our children, and to our society. And, that's my position.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time today. And as a reminder, we are talking with Trent Feuerbach. He is running with the Democratic Party primary as a candidate for the Indiana State Senate race in District 40. One final shout out to our sponsors for Elect Connect: German American Bank, Bunger & Robertson, the City of Bloomington, Hoosier Energy, Indiana University, and Smithville. And finally, just encouraging you to vote on June 2nd in the primary election. A reminder that all voters are eligible to vote by mail, and we would encourage you to do so. More information is on the county website at monroecountyvoters.us. And we'll also have additional information on the Chamber website at chamberbloomington.org/2020-primary primary-election. Thanks again for joining us.